I'll give you an X. I can't keep a straight face while I do these things. You can't see her, but the little one is like right here too. See? She's right here. She blends in so well with the sheets and background though. Afrodo Review. Hello everyone. Afrodo Reviews here, helping you decide, is that book worth reading of a second breakfast? Or does it deserve the fiery pits of Mount Doom? Let's decide. Did you shove the little one out of the way? She's just staring at me all funky. Today's book is The Dangerous Days of Daniel X, published on July 21st, 2008. It was written by James Patterson and Michael Ledgewidge, though if you know anything about how Patterson writes his books, it's more like James Patterson came up with the idea, made an outline, threw that outline at Michael Ledgewidge and says, fill it out, and then walks away, slapping his name on the finished product. So, anyways, the book is the first of 6 novels, at least what I could find, starting with this one, The Dangerous Days of Daniel X, but following the adventures of Daniel X, Alien Hunter. I don't know if that's what it's called, but I do know that's a sequel. I believe that's one of the sequels I actually read of this. Apparently, a film adaptation was planned after a film company named New Regency Productions got a hold of the film rights for Daniel X. However, the film itself has been so stuck in production hell ever since then that it's never come out, obviously. However, oddly enough, there was an audio drama published based on Daniel X Genesis that was released in 2022. And there was a video game adaptation based on the world of Daniel X, not necessarily any one of the books that are out there. That was a Nintendo DS classic release. I don't know if it was a classic, but Nintendo DS exclusive. And I've literally never heard of it before today, even as into Daniel X as I used to be, so that was interesting to find out.
He was born with a great power. He creates out of thin air.
But it was called Daniel X Ultimate Power, but it was released in 2010. So, despite not being one of Patterson's best-selling novels, it actually had a fair amount of trivia to talk about that wasn't just, here are the rewards it received, here are the, With that being said, here's the title card. Alright, here's the report card. We move on to the cover. And the cover is, I don't want to call it terrible, but I hesitate to even use the word okay. Because, it's got the Patterson-style glossy text right on front. This time in blood red. I mean, if you've ever seen a Patterson book, he always does this for his books. Yeah, the background is mostly black with the solar eclipse right there on the front. To specify that this is a solar eclipse and not like a different planet or anything, here it is on the back, the solar eclipse either ending or starting. Now, the reason I make sure to specify that is because this solar eclipse is a completely irrelevant thing. Apart from, adding that celestial ambiance to it, that hinting that this is going to at least be a sci-fi, and the loosest term, it's kind of like a sci-fi fantasy in my opinion. But this solar eclipse, if you put something like that on the cover of your book, it has to have some kind of relevance to what you're doing. This isn't. The solar eclipse is not something that ever happens in this book. In fact, the sun and the moon and none of that has any relevance to what goes on in this book. And it wasn't until after that I was sitting there staring at this cover that I was like, why is there a solar eclipse on the front? What is the point? I do know that other covers came out later, and those covers, from what I've seen of them, do match the book a lot better. However, this is the cover that I had as a kid, and this is the cover of the one I found. So this is the cover that I'm reviewing today. And I really don't know what young Afrodo thought when he picked this up in the stores. Not even the stores. I picked it up in the library in middle school. So it got me. I'll give it that. But nowadays, the cover. It's a cover. It's a cover. It's not even really okay. It's just a cover. Now, the context section. Now, generally, every time I do this, I do 2 things. In my TBR video, I read the synopsis of the book as it presents itself. That way you can get a basic idea of what will be coming up. If you want to see me read directly from the book, check out my TBR video. However, for the sake of this review, I'm going to give a quick synopsis of my own. The book is about Daniel X, a alien on a planet Earth who has been gifted the list, which is really just a fancy way of saying the outer galactic FBI most wanted list, basically. He's been using this list to hunt down dangerous alien outlaws on the planet Earth since the age of 3, after one known as the Prayer killed both of his parents while he was in the other room. Now the synopsis on the book says it was in front of him and they gave him, but that's a false flag. So ever since then, he's been doing that. Now, what makes this interesting is that Daniel X is not just a normal kid. He's not just a human. He is someone with reality warping powers. Powers that are so strong he can literally create his imaginary friends and make them real. Or he can... You know what? To be completely honest with you, no limit is ever really given on these powers, so he can pretty much do whatever he wants. Daniel X is kind of a Mary Sue, but this book has way more problems than just that. So, yeah, that's basically it. That's basically what I'm going to go for. This book in specific is about him finally deciding to jump up on the list and go after number 6 most dangerous creature on this planet. Why he starts at number 6 and doesn't go like to number 5 or to number 10 and then go down, I don't understand. I remember that being an issue I had even when I initially read the book. It was like, why 6? Because I think in the next book he skips 5 and goes straight to 4 or 3. And it's like, why are you skipping numbers? Just do them in order. All of these people need to be stopped, right? I'm getting ahead of myself. Allow me to just go ahead and get into the review from here. As you can tell, I'm having a lot of difficulties not just keep going. For those of you who have already watched my TBR, who paused the video and went to go watch it after I told you to, you remember that in my TBR I said that this book was the one that I was ultimately the most worried about of my collection. That this is the book that, of all of them, I felt was going to hold up the least well. That was because when I tried to get into Patterson's more adult works, the ones aimed specifically at adult audiences, and the stuff he's most famous for, the Alex Cross series, I found that the book I read, specifically Four Blind Mice, as I mentioned in my worst books of 2022, the Four Blind Mice was such a bad book. It was so facile. It was so bland. It was just so unfulfilling as not only a mystery but a thriller. The characters didn't act like people. They weren't smart. They treated the whole scenario like they could have done anything else, but we as the audience are like watching, like there's not even a mystery. The mystery of who these killers are is spoiled on the third page. My bad. So obviously, with that in mind, when I picked up this book, I was willing to believe that maybe Four Blind Mice was an outlier for James Patterson. Because I do remember loving James Patterson. The Maximum Ride series is one of my favorite books in middle school and high school. And then, I remember liking Daniel X up until about like the 3rd or 4th book. And so I thought, maybe I got the outlier. Maybe I got the bad book. Maybe this is one everyone agrees is just a bad book. Because, I even got it at a thrift store. And no offense, more often than not, the bad books end up in thrift stores more often than good books. Unless they were really popular good books. But, whatever. Unfortunately, no. As I've been hinting at, I was very much right to be cautious because, yeah, this book had all the problems I thought it was going to have. So, okay, let me start with this. The best thing about this book is that it is a very high concept, and it's a very interesting concept that I think had Patterson, or more specifically had whoever Patterson hired to write this book, more in-depth explored, it could have been very interesting. The idea of a young man with reality warping powers hunting down powerful alien criminals on the planet Earth is something that sounds like it'd be a lot of fun. It could, his powers are interesting, and how he uses them can say a lot about himself. Again, I mentioned that he makes his imaginary friends real, and he makes an imaginary family real. And the book itself kind of plays with the idea that it's a good way to showcase how lonely Daniel really is, despite the fact that he can literally create people from his mind. Because throughout the book, despite the fact that he thinks he sees them as real people, it's very clear they are just from his mind. Most of them are almost sycophantic of him. They never really say anything wrong about him. They don't call him out on faults. And they mostly just exist to offer him viewpoints that he himself already considers. The only person who ever offers a differing viewpoint to what he is currently considering is his mother that he creates. And even then, it's not strong, it's more like his own subconscious doubts. Since this book has him interacting with humanity for a while, it could have been really interesting. And for a bit, the book almost seems like it's going that route. When Daniel decides to enroll in a high school because... Okay, first of all, Daniel's a Mary Sue. I know this is kind of coming out of nowhere, but I need to establish this real quick. At age 3, he's using Play-Doh to create the 7 wonders of the world in his basement. And he has reality warping powers. And point is, he's a Mary Sue who can basically do everything and very rarely does something wrong. He does mess up, so it's not terrible. It's not like Ray levels of Mary Sue from the Disney trilogy. In this case, he is kind of a Mary Sue, and you do feel it. So anyways, on to my point. He enrolls in high school when he goes after number 6, because an issue he had in his last job was the Detroit police trying to arrest him for truancy because someone called and reported that they saw him leaving the house at all hours of the day, even when he should be in school. During that time, we get showcases that there was going to be a deeper introspection of Daniel's character. That because he tries to, manipulate the vice principal into liking him more by pretending to be really interested in history. However, the vice principal immediately picks up what he's doing because he sees him staring at the Civil War books he has in the background. It's kind of like, okay, I'll put you in AP class. And then he has a crush on a girl named Phoebe Cook as opposed to his imaginary crush, Dana. And it would have been a nice showcase to show Dana might be what he considers a perfect girl to have a crush on, but Phoebe is real, and real people aren't defined by how he's seen them all this time. It's a very good way to show that Daniel X, ironically, despite being a reality warper, doesn't understand reality anymore because he's been alone for so long. No, the vice principal is just there to be a bully teacher who likes to lord how much he knows over his students. And in the end, he's overcome not even through an intellectual showcase that Daniel is much smarter than him, but he annoys Daniel when Daniel's trying to do something and Daniel just telekinesis him and sticks him on the ceiling. That was the big triumph, and it wasn't satisfying. Or Phoebe Cook, which could have been an interesting case of Daniel trying to romance a real girl after spending so long romancing his imaginary crush, and how awkward he can really be. No, it takes about 30 pages before he's head over heels in love with her, and she appears to be the same to him. For the record, those of you who have read the book and are trying to correct me now, I know the twist behind Phoebe. I remembered the twist partway through, too. I still think that I did not buy that Daniel and Phoebe got as close as they did in such a short amount of time. That's another quick point of here that I'm going to branch into while I'm on the topic. Okay, so you know how I talked about Hunger Games being, kind of simple, how I was able to blitz through it in like the span of 2-3 days. And I said that, it's my experience, it's a little simple to read, and you know what, I could even chalk it up to I've already read the book, so I wasn't taking my time to read it, I kind of already knew everything that would happen. Now this book, that much is kind of true. It had been long enough that I did forget pretty much everything past chapter 53 or something. Everything past the halfway point of this book, I had completely forgot was in the book, to be completely honest. So, I will say that the book didn't have as much familiarity for me as Hunger Games did. You want to know how long it took me to read through this book, though? An hour and a half. It took me an hour and a half to read through this entire book. It isn't inherently bad, but kind of lends to my point about how facile and bland the book is, but let's focus. Where was I? Oh, let's go back to characters. Like the fact that Patterson or Ledgewidge or whoever was responsible for deciding how these characters act do not know how kids act. This scene right here. Step back, everybody. Give him some room. Here comes Albert Daniel Einstein, some wise guy said as I came out of history class. One of the high school tough guys was talking to his buddies in the hall. I was trying to walk around him when he grabbed my shirt and shoved me hard against the locker. Guys, feast your eyes on Daniel Hopper, the mindless new kid. Stand back! I speak brain dead. Me, Jake, another kid said, patting his Abercrombie and Finch polo shirt. He poked me hard in the chest with his finger. You half-wit. So, okay, that scene is AP History kids bullying Daniel because he failed a pop quiz. And now, I was in AP History for a while. I had failed a pop quiz before. In my own experience, people in AP History do not bully people this way, if they do at all. Honestly, in my experience, if I had failed a pop quiz, I probably would have had a couple people, including the football players who were in the class with me. I was a football player in AP History, by the way. Most of them would have just said, hey man, do you need some help? That was a really bad test. Are you sure you're okay? Are you getting enough study time? Then again, that was my experience. I had a really decent high school. The kids in my high school were good people. I mean, I had my issues, but let's not get into that. Anyways, so I can't buy this. I don't buy anyone is real in this story, to be perfectly clear. But that specific issue is a showcase to just how juvenile this book is. Like, this book is a young adult. I looked it up. I made sure after reading this book that it was actually supposed to be a young adult book. Because it feels like it was written for 8-year-olds. And there's even points in this book that I'm pretty sure an 8-year-old would just stop and be like, really? Whoever wrote this has absolutely no respect for their audience. For example, like, okay, I remember mentioning in Aces Wild, I think I mentioned it anyways, that one of the things that was really disappointing to me was it got a little juvenile at times. And it was a YA book, so I kind of forgave it. But it was juvenile in the sense that when our main character had a battle of insults with the main antagonist, the thing that gets under our main antagonist's skin is when our main character's like, oh yeah? Well, you're bald. And it's kind of like, the antagonist isn't threatening when saying you're bald is enough to make them under the skin. But it wasn't pronounced. It wasn't a major issue. It was just something that I kind of rolled my eyes at and said, okay, whatever. This book makes that scene look like a Shakespearean comedy of wit. Our main character, Daniel X. You want to know how he gets under our main antagonist's skin, throws him off his game in a one-on-one battle to the point he starts making stupid mistakes due to the relentless, savage, vicious name-calling that he throws upon him. How, you want to know what it is? You want to know what he says to him? He calls him dum-dum. I really am not kidding. He's literally just like, hey, dum-dum. And that's what throws our antagonist off. Or that scene where Daniel X is trying to reminisce with Phoebe, who just revealed that her sister had been kidnapped at the age of 6, and how she was deeply affected by it, and how she's lost her sister. And Daniel X stops and says, yeah, I lost a sister too. And her name was Pork Chop. These are so juvenile, like, it takes all the punch out of that moment. I just, like, it's so stupid. It is just, like, so stupid, I'm like, what? How did I ever like this book? This book also does something that really pissed me off. It was a thing that I had also talked about in Melancholy Magic, and to a lesser extent, Night Flight. And that is, this book establishes and then reestablishes and then reestablishes the same point over and over and over, but then it only sticks on that very last over. In this case, our main character, the big twist is that the main bad guy knows where our main character's home base is. The final twist that sticks is the main character coming to his house and finding out it has been converted to a graveyard with the main, tomb in the middle having his name on it. Very dramatic. And it ends with a sudden, he knows where I am. But when that scene happened, My only thought was, so the dude sends assassins after you at your school that you're attending, sends assassins after you in the house that you're using as a home base, and then calls you on your goddamn landline to taunt you. And is this where you finally come to the realization he knows where I live? He knew where you live. He made that abundantly clear repeatedly. In fact, I'm pretty sure on that phone conversation he says, yeah, I know where you live, dumbass. Because Daniel X tries to play stupid for that whole phone conversation like, I don't know who you're talking about. I think you got the wrong number. Goodbye. He immediately calls him back and says, I know it's you. Stop playing dumb. And it's just like, why is it your house turning into a cemetery? That's where you're like, he actually knows where I am. He called you on your phone. What? This book also has some mistakes that teeter more into the objective category than purely subjective. I'm not going to say they're 100% objective, but there are definitely things that I would argue is more on a technical side of things as opposed to just my opinion. For example, just huge tonal shifts in between chapters. The thing I just ranted about where Daniel finally decides that Urgot, the main bad guy, actually does know where he lives. It ends with the despairing, he knows where I live. That's chapter 29. Chapter 30 starts with, I'm so happy to go to school and get to see my crush Phoebe, and I'm going to gush all over her, and la la la. Okay, that came out wrong. I did not mean, I meant gush all about her, not get. It's such a tonal whiplash that I'm just like, what? What? And that happens all the time between chapters. It'll like cut off a sentence to just start it again on the next page. Or the next chapter will start mid-thought. I have never seen a book do that before. Even the Alex Cross book didn't do that. But, at least as far as I remember. But no, there are some chapters that literally start mid-goddamn thought. I don't know if that's the right chapter. I just kind of opened randomly. But it's just like, that's like almost a rookie mistake. Don't do that. Dude, you have how many books? And you're doing that? At least pick a ghostwriter you know can write a book. And books and events in this book literally fly by so fast that Wally West would be jealous of the amount of speed these things have. In the span of 10 pages, Daniel X does the following. He finds out that Phoebe's sister's been kidnapped and was the reason that her family moved to the area. An assassination attempt is made on his life at the school. He runs home, finds out that his mother, who he conjures with his mind, has been conjured, but he doesn't remember conjuring her. Questions it, decides to accept it, and then goes back to Phoebe to make a plan about how to save her kidnapped sister. Not 7. All that happens in 10 pages. Now, if this was over the span of maybe 20 or 30 pages, I get that. Okay, that makes much more sense. No, that was 10 pages. 7 completely different subjects. 10 pages. Furthering that, I think the book reveals way too much way too soon. One of the things that is kind of teased at this book is Daniel doesn't know if he's human or alien. And the book doesn't make it. I don't care about spoilers. The book does not try to hide it in the slightest that he's an alien. So, about all this. Who he is, where he came from, the people he has back on his home planet. Fighting an alien bad guy who's destroyed his people's planet and is currently, excavating it for all its resources. And even the reveal that his imaginary friends aren't actually as imaginary as he thought they were, because it's implied that they're a bunch of friends that he made while in his preschool days, and they formed a mental link called a Krong, or Krang. Stupid. Or Gring. I don't care. I'm not going to open the book again to find out. But were killed in the initial strike from this villain, implying that, the mental impressions that were in his mind and he can still bring back to life. Point is, you have all these massive reveals. These would be things like, the last book of the series or the second to last book of the series, and you make a whole book out of all these revelations. Not Act 2 of Book 1. Book 1, that's only 238 pages long. Those were major reveals, man. That's stuff you save. There's no suspense. You can't learn anything more about Daniel X that's not going to be fabricated in the future books. So, in the end, 3 out of 10.
No, God! No, is no!
The only reason that this book somehow did not get lower, beyond my own arbitrary limiting system, is that the concept of this book alone is good enough to start discussions. I think in the hand of a more skilled writer, this could have been a very interesting book about a young man who, despite having reality warping powers, struggles with actual reality in and of itself. That there's a lot to say here. The idea of an alien bounty hunter hunting down dangerous criminals on Earth, that he has reality warping powers while struggling to learn what being human means when he's not actually human. All these twists, very good. There's a lot of good concepts here, and they could have been almost genre defining if they had been written well. But because they are written the way they are, because they are so facile, because the authors barely spend any time building them up, any time setting them up, any time exploring these ideas, it all just falls flat. Flatter than a pancake. This book, without exaggeration, is basically, I'm actually not exaggerating, I've heard this is how Patterson does it, is probably just an outline that was handed to someone and a few extra words were tossed in to make it seem longer. So when I come to the question of, does this deserve Mount Doom? The answer is yes. Apart from the concept being really good. Dramatic. Apart from the concept being really good and really worth exploring, even in just conversation, this book is not worth the read. It really isn't. And I really am disappointed that a book I loved so much as a kid was just that bad. And now I'm worried about a couple of the other books I used to love as a kid, like the Maximum Ride series. I'm very worried that going back to that, I'm going to find out that, wow, I did not have good taste back then. I mean, I'll always appreciate some of the things these books did, but I do regret how much influence Patterson had over my writing style when I was younger. But hopefully with the next book, the rose-tinted goggles will not be hiding so many red flags. I'll be able to look at it with a fresh perspective and hopefully not be so tinged with the rot and ruin that comes with age. I left the book in the other room and I didn't feel like going to get it. That being said, just remember, with every book comes an adventure, and every adventure is worth having, even the bad ones.